It's October, and it's hard to believe that I'm not preparing to go in to watch a presentation for Star Citizen's yearly event, Citizencon, as I've done for the past couple of years, but this year we're getting something called Citizencon Direct, which is going to be a 2-hour live stream that happens at 1900 UTC on this 11th of October, which I will be staying up to cover on my YouTube channel live, so if you guys want to stick around for that, be sure to subscribe so you know when that happens. But before that happened, I wanted to share a few of my thoughts about what we might see in the 2-hour presentation. It's not a whole lot of time, but I think a lot of things could be talked about and a lot of hype could be built off of it if they have some exciting things to share. And I've got some hopes for what we might see, especially considering that, well, they've made a lot of new content this year, which has been a lot of fun to play. It doesn't look like we're a whole lot closer to that 1.0 release of Star Citizen that they talked about in last year's Citizens. Because of course they are still focused on their Squadron 42 single player release, which I would expect to see some kind of info on soon, even though they said they're not going to talk about it in this 2-hour presentation. If along the way you like this kind of video and you want to see more, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, just like I hope you'll stick around for the generous sponsor of today's video, Incogni. A few years ago, my identity was stolen, and I'm still dealing with the fallout from that today. It happened because my personal info, social security number, address, work history, all that was already on the internet floating around, being sold or hacked by whoever wanted it. And it's not just your name or email. Data brokers trade your phone number, relatives, shopping habits, even your full employment history. If one of those companies gets hacked, like what happened with me, it can get ugly fast. That's why I use Incogni. They get that data deleted right away. They reach out to the data brokers that have it for you and handle all that nasty back and forth. And now with their new custom removals feature in their unlimited and family unlimited plans, if you find out any of your information is on those people search websites out there, a privacy agent will reach out and get your info taken down. When I signed up, I found that over 90 companies were holding my personal info, and it kept growing after that. So no wonder I kept getting invited to those shady investor groups. So if you want a little bit more peace of mind like me, go on over to incogni.com/morphologist and use code morphologist for 60% off. And if it's not for you, you can always get your money back with their 30-day money back guarantee. Again, that's incogni.com/morphologist. To nobody's surprise, I think one of the first things we'll probably be able to expect to see for sure are a couple of new ships. According to the monthly report, we already know that the Perseus is in Lot 0 and pretty close to release. They're probably aiming for IAE, but I think we can expect to see it as the star of one of the presentations that they show off, because everyone knows it's coming, but I think we could also expect to see a couple of surprises. I think we'll probably see a little presentation on how far they are on the Kraken, since they've started working on the white box phase, and we'll probably see a new ship as they've been teasing leading up to the event, and maybe some updates to the Vanduul ships, which will become available in-game pre-Squadron 42 launch. So we might be able to see something like the Stinger, and the new visual updates to the Blade, Glaive, and Scythe, which have been in the game for a long time, but are models left over from years and years ago. Now, personally, it's hard for me to get super excited about new ships nowadays, because a lot of the ships that come online aren't really working yet with the intended gameplay they have featured, unless it's to do with, say, combat or a very tier 0 version of one of the loops, like medical gameplay. So what I would like to actually see, this is more of my hope, is that the new ship that they introduce has something more to do with a big new system that they're bringing online. Say, for example, crafting. If it's a small crafting entry-level ship for making useful things that we'll use in the verse, and that contributes in some really meaningful way to the economy, then I'd be very excited for something like that. Because that's not really just about funding, it's about progress towards the 1.0 goal. Remember, 1.0 is the big thing on the horizon that they need to get to, and there is a lot of components to that 1.0 realization. The things that they listed in the presentation last year show that there's an enormous amount of work yet to do, and we've not seen a whole lot of that done in 2025 yet. But I think that Citizencon, as it's always traditionally been, is meant to be a course correction. It's meant to show that they're aware of the situation and that they have plans going forward for making progress with Star Citizen. So let's talk about some of the bigger stuff I think we can expect to see. As they outlined for their 1.0 vision, they want to get out 5 fully complete star systems for the 1.0 release, and the next on the list is Nyx. We got a peek of that last year at Citizencon, and it seemed pretty far along, but cinematic presentations can be somewhat deceptive, and there's a lot more to a star system than a pretty landing zone. There's a lot of game systems, missions, locations. You can't just have one point of interest, otherwise it's a pretty boring system, right? So they probably wanted to spend some time fleshing out Nyx to think about how it's going to be a counterpoint to the other systems they already have planned and the ones that exist. If you think about it, Stanton is a moderate to high security system that's relatively safe for new players, and Pyro is the exact opposite. It's lawless, everyone out for themselves, and basically a murder hobo fest if you run into players. Nyx, I think, is supposed to be something in between, but more to the flavor of it. It's a system often rated by the Vanduul, so I think it's going to be also quite focused on facing a new alien threat, which would be pretty exciting, and it would make sense as we're getting close to the release of Squadron 42, and I don't think they should be too concerned about revealing too much about how the Vanduul fight and what they look like in the universe. Plus, I think it could build hype for the campaign to learn more about them, actually. Beyond that, I don't think we should expect to see the release of anything beyond Nyx, but they may share their progress so far on the caster system, which they showed the concept of last year, and reveal a bit more about what Terra's gonna be like, seeing as how they've already started developing new biomes like the swamp and the rainforest biomes that we saw last year, which looked incredible, but they don't fit on any current planet that we have in any star system, including Nyx. So those biomes definitely feel like they're eventually meant for Terra, but we'll just have to see. Maybe they throw some of those biomes into Pyro and make some of the moons a little bit more exciting. I'm not sure. That could be cool too. And as far as I'm concerned about how I measure progress, I would say that that would be a very tangible step forward towards 1.0, but having new gameplay space doesn't necessarily mean the game feels more developed, right? Because the gameplay systems in Star Citizen are really the things that we interact with every day, and the stuff that makes the game either a game or not a game. So let's talk about what we might expect to see for gameplay. I think one of the first things we can definitely expect to see is some form of engineering, and I think it's going to happen in the keynote presentation that they do within the 2 hours they have. I'm very sure they're going to have a cinematic that shows off the Perseus, going to Nyx, and probably showing off some kind of engineering gameplay that they've been working on forever, and probably a little bit of quantum boosting that they showed off before, which allows you to travel more short distances, like 50,000 kilometers or so, using the quantum drive. They'd shown that off as well, but we've not heard about that for some time. And at this point, I think they've already talked about engineering so much that it doesn't really need to have much time dedicated to it in a 2-hour presentation, because we pretty much know most of what they want to do. Maybe we just don't know what the fully realized Tier 1 implementation is going to look like. So that's why I think the presentation is just going to show it working, and then they'll have a quick explainer, and they're going to move on to something else. I mean, that's my expectation. But just as with medical gameplay, there's not going to be very much purpose or point to doing engineering gameplay other than it's something maybe you just enjoy doing as a gameplay loop. As with the systems we have right now, it's easier to just reclaim your ship if it's broken versus trying to repair every piece and going through the trouble of getting it up and running again. So how do they make that actually make sense? Well, I think that that's where crafting and base building come in, because that's where tiering of items also comes in. They talked about last year how crafting was going to help you create, items like ships and hulls and components that were higher tiers of power that would make them more valuable than the base level component. This would mean that if you lost a ship, it could potentially be a lot more catastrophic if it's not covered by insurance. So all of these pieces of the 1.0 puzzle really need to come into play to make things like medical gameplay and engineering gameplay feel worth doing versus just reclaiming your ship or holding backspace. So what I really hope to see in this presentation is some step forward to a Tier 0 or Tier 1 implementation of base building. Maybe by the end of the year we have a new ship or vehicle that allows us to place down a very simple base and a very simple form of mining extractor to be able to start implementing this whole crafting and tiering system to see how it all actually works out. Because remember, a lot of this stuff is currently on paper and we don't know if it's actually going to work in reality, which is why it needs to be tested. This would finally give purpose to all of the islands of features and content we've had so far. Finally, mining for certain items and going out for salvage makes more sense to work towards a bigger goal for the whole org or for your group of friends. And finally, and this is more of my hope, not my expectation, I'd like to see some more progress with the whole social systems that they've been working on. We got some concept images last year on how that might look, but I would like to see some in-game progress towards that, to giving us the ability to have orgs in-game, to have org coffers, to have a better social system, better comms. You know, all of that is really necessary for making an MMO, and we've just not had that up until this point. Much of the community organization happens off of Star Citizen in discords or in forums, and not in the actual game, which is very strange. Especially for a game that's already now nearly 15 years old. So yeah, that's my vision for the 2-hour presentation. It seems like there's a lot here to try to get into that 2 hours, and I don't expect to see most of this stuff, but I think some of the basics like Nyx, new ships, and some new gameplay systems are something we should expect to see because, again, Citizencon is meant to really give us hope for the future, to see what the road is going forward to realizing that dream for 1.0. Ultimately, all I really want to see is how they're going to get to that 1.0 release, because they talked about what they want to do last year, but we don't know what the step-by-step process is. What's next? What's coming in the next quarter? What's coming in the next quarter next year? What step are they going to take to get to that 1.0 release so that, you know, we're not waiting another 3 or 4 years to get the next star system like we had to wait for Pyro? Because if that's the case, well, 5 star systems could still take another 10 years, and that may be a bit too long for most people's patience. But I may be way off on that because I thought that funding was gonna go down this year and it's higher than it's ever been. So, you know, maybe I don't know anything about anything. So what do you guys think down below? Am I right on this? Do you think my predictions are gonna be really close to reality? Are you watching this after Citizencon? Let me know how close I was to the, you know, predictions. What do you guys hope to see? What things are you excited about for Star Citizen going into the next year to realizing 1.0? Let me know down below. As always, if you liked the video, you know what to do. Hope to see you in the next one.